When you ask people like Pearl, these trad cons or Matt Walsh, what is a woman? What do you think they would say?
An adult human female.
An adult human female. Is that the scientific answer or the social LGTV answer?
I'm pretty sure it's scientific.
Exactly. So when they're talking about what is a man, what is a woman, it's purely scientific. When you ask them what is a child, what would they say? Would they appeal to science and say someone who has not hit puberty, that is a child, and anyone who's hit puberty is no longer a child and now is an adult? Would they use that kind of definition? Just like people traditionally use that definition a few hundred years ago, all throughout history, the age of majority was basically that. Would they use that? No. So why are they picking and choosing? Why now is childhood a social construct but a woman isn't? So just to give you a briefing on the situation, she took to Twitter, of all places, for some reason, to ask a fundamentally difficult question for a lot of people to fathom nowadays, which is, did the Prophet ﷺ really marry Aisha at the age of 9, or marry through the contract at 6 but consummate at 9? Now, the issue that most Muslims took with it, including Muhammad Hijab and others, rightfully so by the way, is the terminology that she used. She asked, did he screw a 9-year-old? Did he date a 9-year-old? In what world does she not know that Muslims don't date? Like, maybe, your women where you're from screw. Maybe they get screwed. Our women don't get screwed, alhamdulillah, because we protect our women. She later only really vocalized the voice of some anonymous historian who she says, she basically put out tweets on this person's behalf, saying that she did not hit puberty and this is wrong and these people are biased, these people are wrong. At the same time, the facts that he's stating line everything out that it was completely okay. What do I mean? I mean that the person in the argument stated that the age of majority was around puberty. Aisha hit puberty, therefore it was okay. She was the age of majority for the time. Their problem was they didn't believe Aisha hit puberty for some reason. For some reason. They had no evidence for this, didn't share anything. They just called everyone else bogus for saying so. Even though every scholar, even early scholars at the time of the tabi'in, in the Sahaba as well, believed that she started menstruating and hit her puberty, at 9 years old. So this has never been a point of contention. In this whole discussion, the issue has never been whether she hit puberty or not. This is just something that I've seen recently. Because I think people know they can't really discuss it morally from whatever standpoint they have, whether they're an atheist or a Christian or even a Hindu, because they have that stuff in their books as well. After all of that took place, and she only vocalized basically the anti-Islam rhetoric, she only seemed to want to believe the anti-Islam rhetoric, the belief that she was 19 instead of 9, and she made a 10-year mistake somehow. Even though she narrated thousands of hadith, somehow she made a 10-year mistake. Or one of the hadith transmitters accidentally said 19 instead of 9, because in Arabic you would say like 19 instead of 19. They forgot the 1 instead of saying it. How do you make a mistake like that? If they made mistakes like that, they wouldn't be top level narrators. The hadith wouldn't be as widely transmitted as it was. So the loops they have to jump to say that. But that seemed to be the case she wanted to believe. Even going as far as to say, I can understand 11 or 12, but 9? What makes 11 okay and not 2 years earlier? If the person is as developed as some 11-year-olds, there's no way to qualify it based on an age. There's no standard for it there based on age. But what do you guys think so far from the situation I described?
It's nothing new, bro. This has been a criticism for many years. It does cause a lot of fitna, bro, in the community. It causes a lot of doubts in a lot of people that are misinformed, or they fall into the fallacy of presentism. They look at things from a modern lens, Western laws, but this is why you have people like the brother Full Metal Theist that has made academic criticisms and refutations on these claims.
Actually, Muhammad Hijab has a really, really good 2-part video, I guess, series where he was teaching a class on this topic on the Sapiens Institute, and it's on YouTube. It is so amazing, I'd say, academically, the way it breaks it down from the different angles, from the Islamic angle, from how a Christian might attack and how to respond, atheist might attack, how to respond, all the way to what's maybe in the Hindu scriptures he mentions towards the end, what some of the academics say about the age of majority and the age of maturity, about when people were considered mature, about how childhood has now become a social construct. And he made a very interesting point, which is, when you ask people like Pearl, what is a woman? Or these trad cons or Matt Walsh, what is a woman? What do you think they would say?
An adult human female.
An adult human female. Is that the scientific answer or the social LGTV answer?
I'm pretty sure it's scientific.
Exactly. So when they're talking about what is a man, what is a woman, it's purely scientific. When you ask them what is a child, what would they say? Would they appeal to science and say someone who has not hit puberty, that is a child, and anyone who's hit puberty is no longer a child and now is an adult? Would they use that kind of definition? Just like the people traditionally use that definition a few hundred years ago? All throughout history, the age of majority was basically that. Would they use that? No. So why are they picking and choosing? Why now is childhood a social construct but a woman isn't? If gender is a social construct, people can say whatever they want about it. If it's related to sex, they can't. Same thing with childhood. So why do you pick one scientific answer for one and then a social construct answer for the other? You are now a progressive leftist, if anything, and you're not traditional. I think that was an amazing point that, again, not my point, but Muhammad Hijab made. I think it was fantastic. On top of that, guess who she decided to visit on their stream?
Ridwan.
Yeah. Radvan and David Wood, out of everyone, if you're sick, you have a stomach ache, you go to the doctor. If you have a toothache, you go to the dentist. If you have a question about physics, you go to a physicist. If you need some pills, you go to the pharmacy, or you go to the doctor and they give you the pharmaceuticals. But if you have a question about Islam, you go to an ex-Muslim and a Christian. Now I do this because I don't know why an ex-Muslim needs to basically have their whole channel dedicated to talking about Islam. And I don't know why a Christian needs to dedicate their whole channel, which is supposed to be apologetics, by the way, to debunking Islam. 90% of their stuff is anti-Islam, if not all of it. So she goes to talk to these people about Islam rather than just speaking to Muslims. We've invited her. I'm sure Muhammad Ajab, even though he was upset with what she said, would be down to talk to her. We're open to it. We've extended an invitation many times. I literally responded 50 different times to her tweets with tweets of my own, but she goes to them to talk about Islam. That speaks volumes to me. What do you guys think about that?
You know how people, they go fatwa shopping and they try to find the answer that suits them?
Yeah,
She's just looking for the thing that suits her way of thinking at this moment in time.
absolutely. And I was actually, when I asked the question, I thought about it for myself for a second, and I agree. I think that she's actually scared to get the opinion that she was 9 because she just can't conceive of a world where that's possible. But if she herself lived just a few hundred years ago, that would have been her reality. In one of my tweets, I responded with a picture. It was kind of the best estimate or the best understanding of historically what the age of majority was, in the 1800s. And in the 1800s, I think majority of states had 10 as like the age of maturity on average, some 12. 200 years ago, literally 200 years ago, 10 years old. But 1400 years ago, 9 years old, that's crossing the line. I don't know why that is unfathomable for her, but I think she just needs to be educated on it, to be honest. It's just a matter of if she's willing to be. So, what do you think Radvan David Wood presented to her as the answer? Do you think they mentioned, oh, it's a fallacy of presentism, it's okay, because that was how they did things at the time, and she was mature for the time, and no,
It's probably
of
just
course not.
emotional, bro.
Of course not. On top of that, they added things that had nothing to do with the situation. I want to talk about what happened afterwards. They mentioned a hadith where Aisha radiallahu anha was playing with dolls, and she was with like other like female girls or whatever, and they were all playing. And the Prophet ﷺ would enter the room, walk in the room, and the other girls would run away and hide, and then the Prophet ﷺ would call them out and to go back and play. For some reason, they read this and say, therefore, when the Prophet ﷺ consummated with her, she did not have puberty because she's playing with a doll. How on earth do you get to that? And it's so funny because David Wood himself, if you watch his videos, sometimes you'll have like an action figure behind him on the shelf. There's something I think Ali Dawa mentioned in the video. People will be playing video games and watching cartoons like anime and stuff until they're 30 years old, 40, 50 years old. They're old men playing video games. And 1400 years ago, when the only like toy they had or the only entertainment they had was like poetry and dolls and that stuff, all of a sudden, that means that she's a child. There have been experts, and Muhammad Ajab mentioned it in the video, that have discussed that toys would basically grow up with you over time and they'd become a cherished object for you to pass on to your later generations. So when you find a toy, it doesn't necessarily mean it actually belonged to a child. It could be someone who brought it from childhood up to adulthood and was going to pass it on to somebody else.
I don't know what's so crazy about it. I mean, just the other day I was with my sister. We were in this place called, I think, Sky Zone, something like this. It's a trampoline park.
Yeah.
And some little kid shouted out that he wanted sex. And I looked at this little kid and I just gave him this look. And I looked at my niece. I was like, nah, you're not going to be around this little kid. This little kid was probably maybe like 8 years old, 9 years old. When I told my sister this, my sister said, yeah, some kids that in 4th grade are already having sex. So these kids in 4th grade, they're like 9, 10 years old. It's understandable that when we reach puberty, sexual thoughts begin to go through our head. This is a fact. I mean, there's little boys who are like 5 years old, 6 years old. They have things like this going on in their head. They have no idea what it is.
Yeah.
They're over here touching themselves I don't know what, little toys, little Barbie dolls, and they have no idea what they're doing. It's human nature.
See, this is the thing. Like, if let's say two 12-year-olds wanted to have sex or whatever, and they use protection or whatever, how many people would actually have a problem with that and say, no, you cannot? So it's about, this is the thing, and this is something Islam is 100% with. It's about protecting people who are not ready. It's about protecting people who are not ready for sex and for marriage, whether they're too young or too old. A lot of things I'm saying go back to the video with Muhammad Ajab. So if you want to watch that, go ahead, inshallah. But there's a place for doctors in Islam as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, if you don't know, ask those who know. And Prophet ﷺ, he said in a hadith that basically if there's a doctor or a practitioner or a medical expert who basically prescribes something to a person and ends up damaging them more, then the doctor actually bears the sin of that or the fault of that. So they have a place. So you can consult medical experts on if someone is capable or ready or not ready or whatever. for marriage and for sex and all that stuff. So if it's about protecting people, the reason it's wrong is because it's harmful. So now I pose a challenge to everyone who thinks that the Prophet 1400 years ago, when he married Aisha radiallahu anha, it was wrong based on this principle that it's harmful. Show me one hadith where she was harmed by it. Show us a hadith where she was harmed by the fact that she married at 6, consummated at 9. And if it didn't harm her, then you can't say it's wrong by your own standard.
I don't think that the problem is that she was 9 years old. I think the problem is with these people is when they look at the age of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam
Mm-hmm.
and they see this huge disparity. But if you look at today's day, you have guys that are like 70 something, 80 something years old, and they're with women who are like 15. So what's the difference here?
People cannot fathom a reality other than their own. You can't even really fathom what it's like to not live under liberalism, to not live under capitalism. You can't really fathom what it's like to live under any ideology other than this. So you think you're going to be able to understand, a few hundred years ago, and like literal, like what you consider children were basically grown adults. Like people at, 12, 13, 14, 15, just a few hundred years ago would do things like, fight in wars or have full families, be out working in the markets. Even today, by the way, if you go to certain countries, you see what we consider young boys who have families, who have kids, who have families, who are maybe like they're 13, 14 themselves, getting water from wells and all that stuff. In today's world, just not in the West that you live in. We have a super chat here. Salam brothers, keep up the good work. I was wondering, how come Aisha radiallahu anha had dolls when it's prohibited to have objects which imitate Allah's creation? So there's two opinions. One is that this event took place before she hit puberty. That's one understanding of it. Another one is that the doll didn't have any facial features. So there it's halal. It's only haram when it has facial features. Some scholars said this actually happened, I think it was like 12 years after Aisha radiallahu anha either married or consummated. So, when she was like 15 or 16 years old. So hadith is about when she was 15, 16. Again, doesn't even fall into the context of trying to push it in by that understanding.
Bro, it's human nature that we look for things that affirm our values and beliefs. You know what I mean? Actually, you know what? I was watching this video by Asam Al-Hakim today on mortgage. Is it permissible? And he was saying that these are people that have genuinely made up their minds that they want to get a house that they can't afford. So what they do is they don't really care what scholar said that it's permissible. It's just the fact that one scholar said it's permissible. You know what I mean? And they just go fatwa shopping. So I think it's, subhanAllah, it's no surprise, bro. Even with the kafirs, they find things that reinforce the beliefs just to feel almost backed up in things that might be deviant or wrong or immoral. But this does beg the question that I want to ask both of you. Have you guys heard about the Stockholm Syndrome argument for Aisha radiallahu anha? And what would you guys say to that?
I would say produce your evidence. So what is Stockholm syndrome? Stockholm syndrome is basically when you are abducted, let's even add like emotionally or whatever, by a person, and you end up falling in love with them afterwards. This is clearly a process in which you don't want to be with this person, but you're either abducted or forced by your family or kidnapped by a person, and you don't want it, but eventually you fall in love with the person. You're captive. Show the evidence that she was against it. She didn't want it in any capacity, in any way. Even something later on where she's like, first I didn't want to marry the prophet, but later I fell in love with them. Something like that. Show it. If not, you can't make the argument. An argument is not a claim. A claim is a claim. I can claim that you're ugly. That's a claim. An argument is a claim with evidence. So okay, that's fine. You want to claim that, cool, it doesn't matter. If you want to argue that, please bring your evidence, and then inshallah we can actually entertain it as if it's something worth talking about. We have a question here. So when did she hit puberty? When she was 9 or 15? When she was 9, approximately. 15 would be very, very late. If anything, that would be fairly abnormal.
Also, then the Prophet ﷺ wouldn't have consummated the marriage if it was 15. Because never did he do anything that was immoral or against the teachings of Islam, against the commandments of Allah.
A big problem is as well these people that they latch on to these things that make them angry, make them emotional, and make them think, look, because of this, Islam can't be the truth. I think these are people that are not actually looking for the truth. Because if you were looking for the truth, you would first take a step back. And then you would see that you've been programmed since you were a little kid. And the way you think, the way you perceive everything has been programmed into you. And in order for you to see things exactly for what they are, the reality, step outside of the matrix, you have to first want to actually look for the truth. Because once you want to look for the truth, then you realize there's a lot of lies out there and I need to take a step back. And the moment you take a step back, you see the reality. You say, oh, well, I've been programmed ever since I was a little kid. What have I been programmed with? What have they been trying to show me? What kind of thought patterns and behavioral patterns were they trying to put within me ever since I was a little kid? And once you start to deconstruct this, you start to see the reality of why they were doing this. And then you start to see, okay, well, what are they trying to go against. And one thing leads to another, and it brings you to Islam. I mean, genuinely, if you really are seeking the truth, you wouldn't be angry about this. You wouldn't be over here trying to find one little thing to justify your emotion. Like, if I'm angry about something, I could play the victim card. I could just continue to be angry, or I could chill out and actually, see why it is that I'm getting angry.
Do you think this was the case, bro, in your reversion to Islam?
100%, because it came from stepping away from everything, doing a dopamine detox. I was literally away from everything. And I started to just break every little thing down in my head. I think genuinely with these people, they are not really looking for the truth. Because even as Muslims, Allah still says, seek the answers, read for yourself. You ask any Muslim, you ask any scholar, and they will all tell you the same thing. Look for the answers yourself. Do not believe blindly. I mean, you have Muslims that still look to even see, oh, is Islam actually the truth? And through their search, they find that Islam is the truth. Again, it's genuine, that genuine want to actually find the truth. And I don't think these people have it.